I'm going to be going over all of the weapons in V Rising and the chart that you have up on the screen. I was thinking to myself, you know what? I'm sick of trying to tab through the damn Wikipedia, like 20 different pages, trying to see all the weapons and what they do. So I was like, you know what? If I'm annoyed by that, maybe somebody else is. So I took the time to put together this sheet. And as always, I've got the Discord link down below and I have a resources section in there. So if you want this sheet where it lays out all of the legendaries and what they do on one page instead of having to tab through a wiki, you can pop in and grab that whenever you would like. And maybe at some point here on the channel, I'll do like a tier list, or I'll talk about like the best weapons in PvE or bossing or PvP or whatever. But in this video, what I want to do is kind of frame it as an ultimate guide just to try to help you get a baseline understanding of all of the legendary weapons in the game and what they do functionally. I'm just going to showcase them in action. That way you can kind of pick which one kind of seems to fit your playstyle, or what kind of build you would like to go for involving a legendary weapon that stands out to you in terms of really liking it, or just kind of which legendary weapon or which playstyle would look the most fun to you. So let's get started, and I'm just going to go through them in the order they are on the sheet, and that's not in any specific order like a tier list or my favorite to least favorite or anything like that. It's just a completely arbitrary order. So first up, we've got the Gravecaller, which is going to be a sword, and it synergizes with Condemn. Your primary attack, the left click, is going to be a 3-hit combo, and it goes 35, 35, 40. Now, by the way, that's going to be just the damage number to expect based on your physical power, because you can see there it says 35, 35, 40 physical damage. So what I would do is look at my stats right here. My physical power is 50. So 50 means we're basically going to do about exactly half of whatever this number is. If it was 100, we would do what this number is. And I can show you this really quickly. Like, the number is 35 and my power is about 50. So that means I'm going to get about half that number. So it's going to be like 17 or 18 damage when I do a normal left click. So let's go over here to a single dummy. And this should be 17 or 18. Yep, 18. So yep, that's how you calculate that damage of your primary. And it is a combo. So sometimes new players won't know this, but you actually get a little bit of a bonus on a lot of these weapons if you do the full combo. So your last hit there, that third hit, is going to do that 5% increase of damage, the 40 instead of the 35. And again, if you ever want to know that, you would go off of your physical power. So I know that 40 with this 50 physical power, I'm going to be doing about 20 damage. So if I do 3 attacks, I should get like 18, 18, and then 20. So 18, 18, oh, I critted, but that last one was 20. 18, 18, 20. Yep, there we go. So that's how you can kind of know what's going on based on this combo. And the sword does utilize a 3-hit combo. Then for the sword, obviously you're getting that 25% physical damage bonus to vegetation. And our first ability is going to be Whirlwind, which is going to gain an increase of 1 second to how long it lasts if you kill an enemy during the whirlwind. And hits of Whirlwind are going to place Condemn, but the duration can only be increased up to 3 times. So if you start whirlwinding and you kill like 10 enemies, you're not going to get some crazy, 12-second whirlwind or whatever it would be, because you'd only be able to increase it up to 3 times, which means the maximum bonus is an extra 3 seconds. So when I do this whirlwind right here, you can see me whirlwinding around. There's no recast or anything. You see the green there, it places the Condemn. You're just going to want to kind of obviously get around a bunch of enemies and then utilize that ability to spin to win through all of your enemies. And then the second ability is going to be Shockwave, which is each aerial shockwave strike deals 20% bonus damage and reduces the cooldown of Whirlwind by 0.5 seconds. So obviously that means your skill rotation here would be use Whirlwind first, then utilize the Shockwave to lower the cooldown of Whirlwind, so you can cycle back through these things a little bit more often. And this Shockwave ability does have a recast. So you can see there, if I hit something with it, I now have the ability to recast for just that split second after I hit something. But if I don't hit something, I'm not going to be able to recast. So if I just fire this over here into the wall, then there is no recast option. So what you want to be doing in order to lower the cooldown of your Whirlwind is you cast your Whirlwind, then you're going to hit something, then you're going to recast, and boom, I've already got another Whirlwind already right there. So that's our kind of rotation here with the Gravecaller. Whirlwind, then land this Shockwave, then recast the Shockwave, lower the cooldown of Whirlwind, and you're good to go again to just keep spinning to win through enemies. Then next up, we've got the legendary Greatsword, which is going to be called the Apocalypse, and this is going to swing a lot slower than something like a slasher or a regular sword or whatever. It's going to be one of the slower base attacks in the game, but it's going to compensate for that by obviously hitting a lot harder. As you can see here with the primary attack that we're going to be doing 70, 70, and 80 compared to the sword numbers that were a lot lower. And remember, what you would do is pop in, look at your physical power. Again, it's going to be a little bit different here. If you're wondering why it changed, it's because when you equip a weapon, the sword I was using probably had a little bit of a boost to physical power. It had a roll like that on the weapon, and the great sword maybe does not. So that's why it's going to be 45.9. So if I look at this number, what is going to be 46% of this 70? It's going to be something like in the low 30s, like, I don't know, 32, 33, something like that. So let's go ahead, run over here, and boom, 32. So again, that's how you get that number. And this one's going to hit a lot harder than something like a sword, but it's going to attack a lot slower. And I believe when I was testing it, the DPS for the greatsword was actually higher than the sword in terms of like just left click comboing against a single target. So even though it does attack a lot slower, it is going to have a pretty good output still compared to the other melee weapons. So then with your first ability right here, the Great Cleaver, you're going to charge forward, swinging your sword, dealing damage and launching enemies up into the air for 0.65 seconds. This can be a great initiator, and the legendary version of this is going to do even more damage if they are affected by ignite. So what you would want to kind of do with this legendary sword is do something like proc ignite and then dive into initiate with that Q, and you can really close the distance and slam them super hard with this Q ability that jumps in and closes the space. Then for the next ability, Death from Above, you're going to spawn a lesser aftershock effect when landing that deals 80% damage in a line and inflicts the ignite. So again, you could use that to proc the ignite. You could do this, you could jump up into the air, slam down, and then you light them up with that ignite, then you jump in and you do extra damage and start slaughtering them like that. Or you can save that E ability, this ability that launches you in the air, the Death from Above. You can save that for iframes. Let's say you've got an ability, a boss is going to shoot your way. Well, no problem. You can use that E ability to jump up into the air and use those iframes to avoid that ability. And generally in V Rising, when you have a weapon that has abilities which give you iframes, that's going to be a huge notch in that weapon's belt, because it's really handy to have those get out of jail free cards when you've got something coming your way and you can jump up into the air and be able to avoid it. And the sword and the great sword are both going to be weapons that have a really nice cleave, but I think the great sword is going to have even more of a cleave effect than the regular sword. Then next up, we've got the Cloud Dancers, which are going to be legendary slashers. Now, slashers are going to attack extremely fast and have a pretty good arc. They do also have a 3-hit combo, but you can see the numbers are a lot lower compared to something like the Greatsword, where you've got the 28, 28, 35. So you're not going to be hitting near as hard, but you're going to hit a lot more often. And slashers do have a lot of other really good utility. You've got the Elusive Strike, which is going to allow you to dash 1 additional time, but you're going to deal 20% less damage, and you're also going to inflict static. So what that Q ability is you kind of dash back and forth, boom, 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 and you're going to be inflicting static, and you're going to do a little bit more there. You're going to be getting that extra dash compared to like the base version. You can see here the legendary version gives you that extra dash. Then ability number 2 is going to be Camouflage, where the next hit consumes static, dealing 50% bonus damage. So if you're really trying to maximize damage here with the Cloud Dancers, you would want to inflict static on your target, and then you would use E to camouflage. Then you would attack out of that camouflage and you would consume the static and hit super hard. Now, this camouflage ability does give you a lot of utility, because when we pop that, you can see here we enter this hide state, and then it shows you on the bottom left how long that's going to last. So that can be a very, very good skill for you to kind of get around and get your bearings during a fight, which will allow you to reposition and get set up again for another combo. So if you wanted to maximize the damage, what you're going to do is you're going to inflict static with the Q. You can see I've got the static. Then you would camouflage, attack out of it, and you would get the bonus damage proc there from consuming the static and then getting the big damage boost of 50%, which you'll see if I just camouflage and attack out of it, I deal 40 damage. But if I place static first and then camouflage and attack, I'm going to do a lot more. So what was it? It was 40, then we dash in, and then now we proc that and we attack, and boom, we got 69 instead of 40. And slashers do also have a pretty good radius here on their swings. So if you're just running around destroying breakables, speed farming and stuff like that, slashers are going to do just fine. And slashers do actually have 2 different versions. So you're also going to have these ones right here, Wings of the Fallen, which is going to have a lot of that same setup like the primary attack, and then the Q and the E are going to be kind of functionally the same, but you get a little bit of different effects here with this one. We're not going to be synergizing with something like static. So on our first ability there, Elusive Strike, we're going to conjure a lesser blood fountain when dashing. The eruption is going to heal for 40%, deal 40% damage, and inflict leech. Then the camouflage this time is going to inflict vampiric curse on hit, but reduce stun duration by 1. And then vampiric curse deals 100% damage and leeches 30% health after 3 seconds. So this one's going to be a little bit more of a sustain option, giving you all that leech and a little bit of healing procs. Then the other ones, the cloud dancers, are going to be a little bit more around inflicting that static and then consuming it and dealing extra damage. So you'll see the difference with this one. When I use that dash ability, I don't get the extra dash, but I do come back into that blood fountain that's going to explode on me and give me a little bit of healing. Then for our camouflage ability, instead of consuming that static for extra damage, we're going to inflict vampiric curse, which is going to deal 100% damage and leech 30% health after 3 seconds. So we're going to kind of curse them. Then after 3 seconds, we're going to get an effect from that. So what it looks like is you pop that shadow, you move around, you hit, and you inflict that kind of red black effect on there. That's the vampiric curse. And then you saw it explode after the 3 seconds. Then we've got the legendary spear, which is called the 1,000 Spears. Now on this one, you do have a combo here, a 3-hit combo, and you get pretty decent numbers of 40, 40, 50. And then you get a pretty big boost on that third one. It's not 5%, it's 10%. So with the spear, you do want to kind of ideally do that full 3-hit combo there. You see I went 18, 18, 23. You do get a really nice boost on that third hit. And then for our 2 abilities here on the spear, your Q is going to be launch a lesser ball lightning that periodically shocks a nearby enemy, inflicting static and dealing up to 25% bonus damage. Now, this is going to be kind of a like channeling attack right here, where you lunge a little bit forward, you place all that static, and you do actually really good damage with this, especially single target, where you can kind of launch at something and then channel all that DPS while inflicting static onto them. Also with the spear, sometimes these attributes are pretty meh. I mean, they all have the physical power, but this one here, you do get physical damage to creatures. So if you're out there attacking something with creature blood, the spear is going to absolutely obliterate them. And then also with this Q ability, it does have a recast where you can perform a thrust dealing 50% physical damage and knock them back. So what you can do is come in here and pop off this channel, all that damage, and then boom, recast at the end and push them back. Then for your second ability right here, you've got Harpoon, which normally you're going to throw a spear that deals physical damage and pulls the enemy towards you, inflicting a snare. But on the legendary version, you can see where it says Harpoon now pulls you to the target instead. So you're going to go to their location instead of dragging them to you. The cast time is reduced by 0.6 seconds, and you're going to be also stunning them for 0.7 seconds on hit. So what that looks like here is you drag in, you hit them, and then it drags you right to their location. So you can really utilize that to close distance on your enemy. But not only that, with the legendary version, you're also going to have a lower cast time, and you're going to stun them. So a fun synergy here with the legendary version of the spear is you grip to their location, and then you slam them with this Q ability where you start channeling them with a bunch of DPS, and then you can even recast it at the end. So we use our spear, close the distance, then we hit with our Q, and then we recast, boom, like that. And that's a pretty good combo here where you're going to do a lot of damage, especially single target. But worth keeping in mind that you are going to do pretty good damage with the spear, but you're not going to have near the cleave that you get with something like those swords and those slashers and stuff like that. But you do get a little bit of a pierce, like you can see how it goes through to the next enemy. So you can hit multiple targets with the spear, but just keep in mind you're not going to be getting like that huge arc you're getting with something like a greatsword. Then we've got the legendary twin blade, which is going to be the Fate Dancers. Now the Fate Dancers are going to be a little bit different. It's kind of got like a 1-2 when it hits, so you can see it's not like a one hit, it's going to hit twice. So it's like pop 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 pop. So your combo of like your 3 turn is a double hitter instead of just like swinging one thing through. Obviously it's a twin blade for a reason. You're going to hit them with both of the blades as you come through. And it does combine those hits as part of the single attack. You can see here on the primary, it says that it should do 60%. So if I go up to what's 60% of 45, it should be like in the upper 20s, because 50% is going to be like 23. So if it's 60%, it should be like 27 or 28. So if I left click right here, yep, boom, you get that combo of 28 damage right there, because it says it's going to be doing 60. So just keep in mind it is counting both of those hits of the twin blade. So it's like one single attack of the twin blade is going to count as that 60. So the full combo here of your primary attack going 60, 60, 80 would actually be like 6 hits of the twin blade, where you go like pop 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 pop, and then the last one is going to be a lot better at 80, going pop pop. So when I do that, you'll see like 28, 28, and then 36 there on that last one, because the combo, if you can do the full thing, is going to help you get that little bump at the end. Then for the abilities here on the Fate Dancers, you're going to have your ability 1, which is going to be the Javelin, where the initial hit inflicts chill. But the way this works is it kind of like returns to you. It comes back. So if it comes back through an enemy that already had chill, it's now going to freeze them. So what this looks like here is you drop this ability down, and then it's going to chill. When it returns, it will freeze. So see like that, it laid a chill and then a freeze. But I purposely put that into the wall so you could see that the wall will stop it. So if I cast this into the wall, it's only going to land and then it won't return. But if I give it enough room to kind of spin, what it's going to do now is actually return to me like a boomerang, and it's going to hit everything in its path like that. So now all that stuff got chilled and frozen based on the proc of this hitting them either on the way out, like when it lands, and then coming back. So ideally with this Q ability, you want to hit something twice. So you would want to kind of like drop this in the middle of everything, boom, all that chill, and then when it returns, it's going to now freeze them as well. Then your second ability is going to be a Sweeping Strike, which deals 50% bonus damage to chilled or frozen enemies, which means you'd want to drop your Q and then hit your E, so you would do a lot of extra damage to everything that's chilled and frozen. You would then jump in like that. And that E ability here, the Sweeping Strike, it does have a little bit of a lunge to it. It's nothing like jumping forward like the Great Sword, but you are going to be able to close the distance a little bit. I'll show you here. I'm going to use the E. I'm a little bit far away. I'm going to lunge and then hit them just like that. So you do get a little bit of like a jump towards your enemy. So the playstyle would be, you've got a nice little arc here of damaging a bunch of enemies. You would drop your Q so you can lay that chill and the freeze, and then you would go ahead and use your E to hit them for a lot of extra damage there in kind of a straight line. Then next up, we've got the legendary axes, which are called the Red Twins, and you've got two abilities here called Frenzy and X-Strike. Frenzy is going to increase the duration of Frenzy, and if you mouse over here, you can see Frenzy allows us to dash forward and strike the first enemy, dealing 100% physical damage, which is going to then enter a state of Frenzy, increasing movement speed and attack speed by 50% for 1 second if a successful hit occurs. So what the legendary version is going to do is increase the duration of Frenzy by 1 second, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's actually a 100% boost, because the normal version is 1 second, the legendary version is 2 seconds. So when I launch in here with my Q ability, boom, you can see I'm going to be getting that Frenzy buff down there on the bottom left, and it's going to last for 2 seconds instead of 1. I'll show you that again here. We dash in, and then on the bottom left, you can see that Frenzy right there. Then our E ability here, the X Strike, is going to toss 2 additional axes in a wider cone. So the typical axe E ability would throw 2 axes out that kind of spin in an AoE effect kind of right in front of you. But the legendary version is going to give you 2 additional axes in a wider cone, but they deal a little bit less damage. Then all axes also inflict leech, but may no longer incapacitate them. You can see the normal one there on the bottom left says hitting the enemy where both axes intersect is going to do a 1 second incapacitate, but you can no longer do that with the legendary version. So what this looks like is you kind of have a bunch of enemies right here, and you would do that X Strike where you throw it kind of in there, and look at that. Just look at that massive AoE of all of that leech. So this is a super popular ability that people really like. You got this X Strike, you just launch all those axes into a space like that, and then they return. And the legendary version of the Red Twins is going to also inflict a bunch of leech, so then you could run in and start healing off of all those enemies that you hit with X Strike as well. So with the axes, you can kind of initiate and close a little bit of distance by using that Q ability, jumping in with Frenzy, doing a combo, and then on your way back, you can cast your E ability while you're getting space, and you can still do a little bit of damage from range. So yeah, you're gonna be able to do that one combo really fast, because when you get the Frenzy buff from the Q ability, now you're gonna do that combo of 1, 2, 3 super fast. You can see when I go in and proc this, boom, now I go 1, 2, 3. Look how fast that was. And then you can still back out and get a little bit of damage here with your E, kind of spreading out wherever you would like to place it. And you also get to aim that E ability. So you get like a little bit of a split second to drag it. Like, let's say I'm facing this direction, but I want that E to go over here. I can quickly kind of pull it over and be reactionary with it. Then we've got the legendary mace, which is called the Hand of Winter. Now, your 2 abilities here are going to be kind of like a jumping, crushing blow from up above, and then a massive AoE smack. You can see crushing blow deal 125% bonus damage to frozen enemies. Then smack is going to be hits inflict chill instead of capacitate. You can see here on the base version of it, it says smack enemies in front of you dealing 70% damage, knocking them back and incapacitating them. But what the legendary version is going to do is inflict chill instead of that incapacitate. And then also, if you hit a chilled enemy, you're going to freeze them for 2 seconds, and then you would obviously jump in with that crushing blow where you get 125% bonus damage to frozen targets. So you can do big damage if you've got a way to like freeze your enemies like that, and then you jump in, boom, with that mace. You could easily hit a few targets and do 1,000 damage with this crushing blow hitting multiple things. So you want to kind of like freeze targets, then slam them with that crushing blow, and you do have a little bit of mobility jumping around with it as well. You can see I can get all the way to this target over here, boom, by jumping onto them with that Q ability. Then your E ability, this smack, is going to be a large, wide, sweeping blow, and ideally what you would want to do with that is hit something that's already chilled, because then you're going to freeze them, and then you would synergize with your Q ability here to slam them when they're frozen and do a bunch of extra damage. Then next up, we've got the legendary claws, which are going to be called the Talons of the Lich Beast. Now, you do have a 3-hit combo with the claws here, the 40, 40, 50. But on the third attack here with your primary, you're going to also inflict puncture on that third hit, which can stack up to 3 times. And that does synergize here with the 2 abilities, because they both, at the end here, say they consume puncture for then an extra effect that's going to heal yourself for 25% of spell power. But then also with this primary, when you do have the max stacks, you can see there, we're going to trigger a rupture dealing 75% damage to the target and 50% damage to nearby enemies when we do reach those maximum stacks. And I can show you what that rupture looks like. We're going to go 1, 2, 3. There's 1 stack. Boom, boom, boom. There's 2. And then it should happen right there. Yep. So that's what that rupture looks like, where you get that little bit of an AoE that's going to be doing damage to nearby enemies. Then for the 2 abilities here, you've got Lunge and Skewering Leap, where Lunge is a 25% chance on hit to summon a skeleton warrior affected by agony. And then remember, we're going to consume a puncture, inflicting condemn and healing yourself for spell power. Skewering Leap is also going to be the same thing, with the only difference kind of being what the base ability does. So your Q is going to vault towards your cursor and cleave enemies, dealing physical damage and inflicting puncture. Then your E ability is going to be leaping to the target location, dealing physical damage, inflicting puncture. So you've kind of got like 2 very similar abilities here. I'll show you what the Q right there, you kind of roll forward and hit your enemies, and then E, you kind of launch up into the air. So remember, it's really nice to have those iframes where you get out of the way for a little bit, be able to jump up into the air, and then you saw the agony effect right there, where it makes the skeleton explode after a little bit. So that's what that means when it says a skeleton warrior affected by agony. It's going to exist there for a little bit in the battle, and then it's going to blow up and do some AoE damage. So let's see if we can get that effect to happen here again. Oh, there it is. Okay, so there's our skeleton with agony. You can see the bar, and then boom, it blows up. So yeah, the claws would be like lots of swipes there with AoE, jumping around, diving in, going into the air, constantly proccing these agonies and these punctures and these skeletons that are going to blow up. So you actually can get a really good AoE DPS output speed farming here with the claws. Next is the legendary Reaper, which is called Mortira's Lament, and you've got your 2 abilities here, Tendon Swing and Howling Reaper, where Tendon Swing is going to consume up to 3 allied skeletons, healing you for 50% of your spell power and increasing your spell and physical power by 10% per skeleton for 8 seconds. Then Howling Reaper is going to inflict condemn and a 25% chance to summon a skeleton warrior. So the playstyle here with the Reaper is going to be obviously to toss out that E, proc a bunch of skeletons, you come in with your Q, you consume them, and now you're going to be getting that big empower buff that increases your spell and physical power per stack. And the Reaper does have a 3-hit combo here of 50, 50, 55. Now it's not as impactful as some of them. You don't get like a big 10 or 20% buff here on the third one, so you can play a little bit more of a solo swing style if you like. The 3-hit combo is there, but it's not quite as impactful as some of the weapons. But it's really nice to kind of get that E ability out there, drop a bunch of skeletons, and then if you're up in the fray, you can hit Q to consume them, and then now you get this big empower buff that's going to be increasing your physical and spell power pretty significantly for a pretty long time. And you can see it was still up. I mean, it lasts 8 seconds, so it's almost a full rotation, which you can see here. If I proc my Reaper, get those skeletons out here, and then I hit Q to get that buff, it's going to last all the way until my next Reaper is ready. So if you're playing your cycles properly and you're kind of letting these things happen and you're cycling through, you can almost keep that buff up permanently in terms of this empowerment for your physical and spell power both. Then we've got the legendary daggers, which are called the Wraithblades. Now, the daggers are going to be a very unique playstyle compared to a lot of the weapons in the game. So you can see down here in the bottom left, we've got these stacks of daggers. And what's going to happen is when we do our primary attack, we're going to release all of those daggers. So you can see I do 1, 2, 3, 4. I throw all of those daggers in quick succession, and then we have to wait for a little bit to get a full stack again. So you can see we go boom, 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 do all those daggers, and then it's going to be filling up, takes a couple seconds, and then we're ready to fire off again. And then the way the abilities synergizes is based on how long those daggers stay on the ground. So you've got your Q ability right here. We're going to inflict weaken and deal 3% bonus damage for each stack of Phantasm. Then our E ability is a 33% chance to gain 1 stack of Phantasm for each returning dagger. So we've got our basic ability that throws those daggers and they stay on the ground for a little bit. Then we've got our Q ability, which leaps into the air and it's going to throw daggers that stay in the ground for a little bit. Then we've got our E ability, which is going to return all of those daggers to us while inflicting different effects. As you see right there with release daggers, inflict a 1.5 second fading snare when releasing all of the daggers that are stuck into the ground, and they return to us piercing enemies. So anything that's in our path, those daggers are going to hit on their way back to us. And then each dagger return grants 1 dagger stack and reduces the cooldown of Rain of Daggers. So you would really want to do a quick cycle of getting these daggers on the ground and then returning as many of them to you as possible, and boom, helping you cycle through your cooldowns and get all of those effects to proc. And with the legendary version of it, you do get these stacks here of Phantasm, which are going to be spells have cooldown reduced by 1%, and you gain 1% spell charge for each of those stacks. So the daggers have some advantages and disadvantages. I mean, you do get the range here, but it's a little bit different of a playstyle and a little bit complicated to kind of manage that and then keep the path of them returning properly to hit things. So it's going to be something you really want to play around with a while in game and see if it's right for you. Then the legendary whip, which is going to be called the Morning Star, and I've got something fun to show you here with this one. Now, with the whip, you've got your aerial whip twirl, which is going to be hits cause enemies to burn, dealing damage over time, and then entangling whip inflicts a 0.25 second stun instead of entangle and causes a fiery explosion at the impact, dealing 25% damage and igniting the area. So one thing you can do here that's kind of cool with the E ability is you can use this E ability to strike in a line, but with the legendary weapon, we're going to be inflicting ignite on the area. So what we can do with that is actually burn a whole garden just like this. So I'm going to hit that E ability kind of right out there into the middle of my garden, and then look what's going to happen. Boom, we just harvested our whole garden just by utilizing our whip E. So not only is it pretty useful, but it's also one of the more badass things in V Rising is you just drop that in the middle of your garden and then it roasts it all for you. And then all you gotta do is run around and pick everything up and you're done. But in terms of that E actually attacking, it's just gonna look like that. Boom, you do that kind of like little mid-range whip that burns the area and inflicts some damage over time on your opponents. And you can also get that 0.25 stun there as well. Then the Q is going to be this right here, where we go boom, we kind of launch in, and then we do that damage in an area where we burn our opponents. Now, it seems to hit a little bit harder than Ignite, but it doesn't last as long. So the burn is going to be a little bit more fierce. It just won't kind of sit there and simmer for as long as an Ignite tends to. And then something really important to note here with the primary attack of the whip is you get 2 different interactions. So you're either going to do the 35, 35, 40, or you're going to almost get like double damage here, 65, 65, 70 in the small radius of where the whip actually impacts. So you can see if I kind of hit like something as the whip passes through, I do 16. But if I land the whip right there, I do 30. So you really, especially if you're in like a single target scenario, a boss fight or something, you kind of want to stay at this 1 tile range. So I'm like 1 tile away from like 1 foundation tile away from something I would hit, and then I'm going to get a lot more damage. If you start getting a little bit too close, now you're going to pass through them and do a lot less. Or if you get too far away, like a tile and a half, you won't quite hit them. So as you can see here, this tile on the floor, that's about the distance you want to be from something you're going to hit. And then you'll get that 30. That's the maximum damage here with the primary attack of the whip. But in an AoE scenario, you do get multiple targets here at like that. You can see it's passing through everything and hitting multiple things. It's just going to hit a lot harder at the actual ending point of the whip. And now we're going to be wrapping up with the ranged weapons, which there are 3 of them. So first up, we've got the crossbow, which is going to be the Siren's Wail. You have Rain of Bolts, which is going to fire 2 additional bolts compared to the normal version, and each of them is going to inflict weaken. Weaken is going to be reducing the damage output of whatever is inflicted by it. And then we're also going to have Snapshot to consume that weaken in favor of dealing 50% bonus damage and also inflicting a 1-second fear. So first up, the primary fire does not have a combo. You're just going to fire a projectile that deals 100% physical damage and then consumes marked, dealing 25% bonus damage and increasing your attack speed by 7% for 10 seconds, which can stack up to 3 times. So with our primary attack, it does not place marked, it consumes it. But then if we look at our Q and our E, you can see they both inflict marked. So what we would do is we got a Q, it's gonna rain down those. We've got the E like that. And then if we left click on that same target, now we've got this buff right here that is gonna be taking advantage of the marked that our Q and our E were placing. So with the crossbow, you just kind of want to make sure you're tapping something with one of your abilities, and then you're shooting it to inflict that buff on yourself that's going to last for 10 seconds, and then you're free to fire these left clicks because they're going to be a lot faster. So make sure you're kind of landing those abilities, then procking it, and then you're kind of free to shoot a few, and then by then you've got something on cooldown. You want to proc it, start shooting again, and you want to keep that marked buff up on yourself ideally when you're going to be firing those primary attacks. And then also, if you want to maximize damage even further, what you would do is you would drop the weaken here of your Q ability, then you would consume it with your E to get that extra proc of damage there by consuming the weaken, and that will also enable you to fear them and place a little bit of CC as well. Then the legendary longbow, which is called Oaksong, and the longbow playstyle is going to be taking advantage of multi-shot and guided arrow. So multi-shot is just going to be kind of like a cone of AoE like that, and then guided arrow is going to be like that right there. And the bow style is going to kind of revolve around stacking up focus, like you can see down here on the bottom left. We want to get those stacks of focus, get that to 3, and then release our ability right there. You can see it did 72 damage there on the guided arrow because I had those 3 stacks of focus. If I do not have the stacks, you can see it'll hit a lot worse. It's going to hit all the way down at 59. So the playstyle kind of revolves around utilizing these different abilities to stack that up to 3 and then slam with your guided arrow like that. And you actually can proc all of the stacks of focus if you utilize this Q ability because you get that wide cone. So you can see there, as long as I hit enough targets, now I get all of those stacks, and then I can still hit with my guided arrow to do that 72 instead of 59. So you always want to make sure you're using the guided arrow when you have the 3 stacks of focus. And the primary attack is going to be a little bit different with the longbow because it does have a range of 60 to 120 in terms of the damage based on how long you hold it down. And I can show that to you here. If I do a just normal left click without holding it down, I only do 28 damage. But if I actually hold it down, I'm going to do 55 instead of 28. So the playstyle with the longbow is going to be kind of setting up to where you can feel safe for a second and then holding down and hitting hard. So just keep that in mind as you're kind of firing away. Sometimes you do have to fire a quick shot where you don't have time to hold it down, but if you can get time to hold it down, you're going to do a lot more damage. And then also worth noting that on this Q ability multi-shot, it can be good for pushing things back and keeping them off of you. If you've got like an AoE swarm that's gathering all around you, you can go ahead and hit this Q ability, and you won't see it here with the target dummies, but if I hit all those enemies, they would all kind of get knocked back a little bit. And then last but not least, we've got the legendary pistols, which are called the Endbringers. Now, the Endbringers are also going to have iframes there with the explosive bullet, but you've also got Fan the Hammer, which is kind of like a channeling ability that will do a lot of DPS. And the pistol primary attack does have a combo of 65, 50, 50. So you can see that the first attack, it's a little bit different. It's actually going to hit harder than the other two. So you can see the first one does 30, but if I do the full combo, I get 30 and then 23, 23. But even though that's the case, you do still kind of want to do the full combo of the pistols because the way they work is it kind of takes a second to like set up and start to fire. So if you're going to do that to fire one shot, you might as well fire all 3. So you can see here, if I just want to do like 1 and then move and do 1, like sure, I'm going to hit for 30 every time, but I can also just go pop, 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 and get a little bit more DPS by still doing the full combo, even though it doesn't seem like it because the way the numbers are written. And you do also get a little bit of time in order to get that full combo off. You can move a little bit, like you can go pop, pop, pop like that, and you're going to be doing the full combo without having to get like that full setup time of the first shot. So you can see here, like with the first shot, I click and it takes a while for him to like sit back and shoot. And then once he does that, he's willing to fire 2 more shots. So it's like sit back, pop, 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 and then he fires all 3 of them without having to sit back again. And then your Q ability right here is going to be inflicting ignite, and then the legendary version of it allows you to at least move a little bit, so you can kind of close the distance a little bit or slide a little bit out of like an ability's effect range and still hit them for good damage and inflict ignite. Now the E ability here is pretty popular because you're going to be getting a little bit of iframes here on your E. You're going to dash a little bit and then shoot a shot. But with this E ability, you do want to recast that. If you hit, it will allow you to recast and you can do even more damage with it. So what I want to do here with the E ability, roll in, hit, and then if I hit, I can cast it again, and then boom, I get a lot more damage. And if you don't land it, you won't be able to recast. You can see here, if I miss and I shoot into the wall, I have no recast here on the E ability. If I land the E ability like that, now I get that recast above me and I can recast again and get that big detonation for damage. So there it is. That's kind of the basics of all the different legendary weapons in V Rising. And I will also have that resource, like I said earlier in the video, if you want that full sheet of all the legendary weapons and what they do over on the Discord server that I linked down below. You can pop on into the resources tab and grab that for yourself. And then also make sure to subscribe on your way out, because we've got a lot of guides and tips and tricks and builds and stuff that are going to be releasing soon here on the channel. So I appreciate all of you. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.